what is this called? It's right in front of me and I don't know what it's called. Hi, my name is Skylar, and if this clip looks different than the rest of the video, it's because I underestimated my ability to talk about only 4 books. So originally my game plan was to have my least, most disappointing, most surprising, and favorite books of 2019 all in one video, but I underestimated how much I can talk. So I have to refilm the intros. So in this video I'm going to cover my least, most disappointing, and most surprising books of 2019, and in the next video I'm going to go into my top 5 favorite books of 2019. So to get started, my least favorite book of the year. I'm going to try not to drone on and on about it, but my least favorite book of the year was The Duke and I by Julia Quinn. So I think it's hilarious that this is one of my least favorite books of the year because right when I finished this book, Murphy Napier dropped her reading vlog where she talked about this book, and I watch everybody's videos in the morning while doing my hair and makeup, and so I'm doing my hair for work and I hear her mention this book and mention how she does not like it, and all I thought was, thank goodness somebody else saw that scene and was like, this is terrible. So I also disliked it for the same reasons that Murphy did, is just when you hit the 75% mark in that book, there is, in my opinion, a scene involving a husband and a wife where there is a non-consensual act that takes place, where the wife is the perpetrator of said act and the husband is the victim. Nothing comes from that act really, but you know, it's used as a plot device to separate the couple, and I think that's just an awful, terrible decision to use that as a plot device. That is not okay. Ever. And I know this series is kind of well loved. There's a lot of books in the series. Netflix is adapting it to be a show, I think. But it's just like, are you gonna put that part in Netflix? The difference between me and Murphy is that Murphy said she's not a romance reader and not a big historical romance reader. I am, however. I love romance. I especially love historical romance. I'm a big fan of Tessa Dare. She is my queen. Love Sarah McLean. Like, I am a romance reader. And I love historical romance. That is like my guilty pleasure read. So I went into it expecting to like it, and I was getting along with it fairly well. There were a couple other issues that I was just like, I don't really like how much they lie to each other. I don't like how many secrets they keep from each other, you know, all that. But that's kind of par for the course with romance reads, particularly historical romance reads. But then we hit that 75% mark, and the non-consensual act happens, and the couple is split apart. And the real kicker is they never really discuss what happened, you know? They just never really address the issue. And I think I would have rated it higher had they addressed the issue. I did give it 2 stars. I didn't give any book 1 star, I think, this year. I gave this book 2 stars. Only because I had been liking it. It was probably a 3.5 star read until that point, and that thing happened, and I just didn't like the non-consensual issue, and then I didn't like that they never addressed it. They never had like a clear discussion about what had happened, and that is just not my type of historical romance. I did not like that. Duke and I by Julia Quinn was my least favorite book of the year, and I just will never, I don't want to continue with that series. I honestly don't want to read anything by Julia Quinn ever again. Let's move on to my most disappointing read of the year. So I read this book because I heard Chandler Ainsley talking about it. I really love a lot of her romance recommendations, so bought the book because she recommended it for people looking for a paranormal adult romance, and that book was Dark Lover by J.R. Ward, book 1 in the Black Dagger Brotherhood series. Oh boy. So Chandler did mention in her recommendation, I don't remember what recommendation video it was, but she did mention when she recommended that book that you would have to get over the early 2000s slang. However, girl, how did you get over that slang? Like, I, as a reader, could not. I've never met anybody that uses as many slang terms as the characters in that book did. I have baby cousins who are in high school and middle school right now, and I thought their frequency of using slang was bad. Does not compare to this book. And it's just cringy early 2000s slang. Another thing about this book that just made me cringe and just made me disappointed were, so this is a vampire romance novel. And I can't remember if the girl is a vampire and she just doesn't know she's a vampire or something. I think that's what it is. The girl is a vampire and she doesn't know it yet. Yes, her mate. That's a common romance word, but that's the only one coming to my mind right now, which is Wrath, who is like the leader of the whole group. Yes, his name is Wrath. That's what I'm getting to. That was the second thing that I cringed at. Wrath? That is a terrible vampire name. You know what's a good vampire name? Lestat de Lioncourt. That's a great vampire name. That's a vampire name that is both sexy and slightly terrifying. Lestat, if I hear that name whispered in my ear, I'm going to think it's delicious, and also I'm going to try to run away. All of the names of the vampires were just cringy like that. So we had Wrath was our main guy, and then we had guys named Fury, but it was spelled P-H-U-R-Y. We had a Vicious, that was spelled with a S-H-O-U-S. There was Rage, I think was spelled R-H-A-G-E. Like, they were all spelled uniquely. I think the human guy's character, I think he was a cop, his name was Butch. It was just terrible names. So I couldn't get over the names, I couldn't get over the early 2000s slang and the way the characters dressed and were described. It was just very early 2000s. And then I also didn't like the fact that the book jumped perspectives very quickly and without kind of any warning. You'd be reading one paragraph and then 3 paragraphs later you'd be at a totally different scene in a totally different character's head. It got not ever confusing, but it was annoying. I felt like I never was with one group long enough to actually care about any of the characters. So yeah, I was just disappointed. I think I gave it 2 stars, maybe 2.5 stars. There were some steamy moments that were alright, but overall I just couldn't handle the cringiness of the series, and I thought I could get over it, but I guess I couldn't look past it. So I'm gonna say Dark Lover was the most disappointing book that I read because I had high expectations. I was really looking for a good paranormal romance to enjoy and maybe a new series to binge. So that was my disappointing read. Now to move on to my most surprising read. So I had 2 books that really shocked me by how much I enjoyed them this year. So the first book that really surprised me this year was My Best Friend's Exorcism by Grady Hendrix. This was recommended to me by my bud Richard from RichardReads. I'll link his channel down below, but I'll also link his Instagram down below as well. I'll link everybody that I've mentioned in the description box. I loved this book. I was looking for a first horror novel to dive into because I wanted to expand the genres that I read, and this was a perfect fit for that. It was scary, but never too scary. It kept me interested. This is a book about 2 best friends named Abby and Gretchen. Set in the 80s, something happens over the summer. It's a mysterious incident that occurs, and Gretchen goes missing for like 24 hours. Abby and their other friends find her again, but when they find her, Gretchen's a little off. And as the book continues on, there is just signs that Gretchen has been possessed by a demon. And Abby is on a mission to save her best friend and get her best friend back. This book gave me a lot of Jennifer's Body vibes if Jennifer's Body had a good female friendship. Because the female friendship in Jennifer's Body is terrible. It's toxic, it's manipulative, but this female friendship starts good. Of course, when your best friend's possessed, things happen. The friendship at its core, pre-possession, was very good, and I loved their dynamic. I loved how hard Abby fought for her friend, and I thought the ending was fantastic. I thought it wrapped everything up very wonderfully. Definitely scared me though, because, and I don't know if the book scared me or if it was just the circumstances surrounding my reading experience, because when I was reading this, I was reading it at night. There was something that was hitting the corner of my house and there were things crawling over. I live in the middle of the woods. This book some parts happen in the woods, and so there were just a lot of atmospheric elements that mirrored my own setting that freaked me out. And so I had a few nightmares, but we're all good now. I read my first horror book ever, and I'm hoping in 2020 I can pick up a few more, but this was a perfect first starter, and it really surprised me about how much I enjoyed it. The second book that took me by surprise this year when reading was the one that I always have thought was for 50-year-old Christian women, because it's a Christian romance novel. So let me preface that by saying it is heavily on the Christian romance. It is very faith-based, so if that is not your jam, this book will not be your jam. But I was really shocked at how much I liked it. I cried multiple times, and that book is Redeeming Love by Francine Rivers. Oh my gosh. I feel ridiculous that it's taken me so long to read this, but like I said, I've always thought it was a historical Christian romance, and it's very popular amongst older Christian women, that I was just like, there's no way I want to read that, because I'm not retired. So this is an 1850s Western retelling of the biblical story of Hosea and Gomer. It very much mirrors how that story goes in the Bible. At the same time, this book has lots of biblical references, lots of prayer, lots of conversations with God, lots of finding your own faith. So like I said, if those things aren't for you, this book isn't for you, but if you are open to those things, then this book would definitely be a romance to pick up. It was so sweet. The romance is so healthy. Our Hosea character, Michael Hosea, is a good guy. He's just a good guy. He's not a perfect guy. He definitely has his own faults, his own things that he struggles with, but he was a good guy, and he really, really treated Angel fantastically. I loved how patient he was with her. But Angel is our Gomer character. She has ended up in prostitution by circumstance of life. She had a very rough childhood. She was the daughter of a mistress, so she was like an illegitimate child, and her father didn't care about her mother because that was just his side piece, and didn't care about Angel whatsoever. After a series of events, she ends up being trapped in this cycle of prostitution, and essentially how the story in the Bible goes is that God tells Hosea to go and take Gomer out of prostitution and make her his wife. And that's what happens in this. Michael sees Angel, and God tells him, that's your wife. And so he goes and saves Angel, but she just has zero self-worth, and she doesn't think that she's worthy of being anybody's wife. She sees that Michael is a really good guy, and she feels that she's not worth ever being with a good guy, and that she needs to just go back to being a prostitute. And so that's kind of how the story progresses, and at the end of the day, the whole story is a romance between Michael and Angel, but it's also Angel finding, one, her faith, and two, her self-worth. It's really, really amazing. I loved this story. I can't preface it enough that if you're not open to heavy Christian themes, this book will not be for you. But I loved it. It made me cry. I was so shocked. And I guess I like books that old Christian women like. So that is going to be it for this video. Those were my least favorite, most disappointing, and most surprising books that I read in 2019. Let me know in the comments down below what book took you by surprise this year. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you want to be my friend. I'm going to leave the links to my Instagram, Goodreads, and Twitter down below, and you can be my friend over on those platforms as well. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you're having a wonderful morning, noon, or night, whatever time you're watching this video, and until next time, bye!